Imagine waking up one day and realizing that the world around you is a stage, and you've been playing a role. The people, the conversations, the very routines that defined your existence, they all seem scripted. And worse, you start to sense that no one else seems to notice. No one else questions it. They continue to live in the rhythm of this constructed reality, comfortably numb, blissfully ignorant. But you can't unsee it. You've become self-aware, and with that awareness comes a strange unease, the unease of knowing that you're no longer just a player in the game, but the one who's figured out the rules. But here's the paradox. You now know too much, your consciousness has been expanded, your understanding of the world deepened, and yet, in that very same moment, you become an outsider in the very world that once felt like home. As the fog of illusion clears, you begin to question, what's worse? To live in the comforting ignorance of the masses, or to wake up and face the terrifying, almost suffocating reality of what you've seen. You stand at the precipice of a terrifying realization, one that everyone else seems to avoid at all costs. The truth is, society fears the self-aware individual. It fears the one who dares to see beyond the veil, the one who refuses to conform to the neatly packaged versions of reality that are handed to them. This individual, who is acutely aware of their existence and the absurdity of the world around them, becomes a threat. Why? Why does the self-aware individual provoke fear, disdain, or even hostility from others? What is it about true awareness that unsettles people so profoundly? It's not simply that these individuals disrupt the social order, but that their very presence exposes the hidden undercurrents of discomfort that society has long buried deep beneath its polished exterior. Self-awareness is a mirror that reflects truths many would rather not see. And so, the great question arises, is it better to live in blissful ignorance, or to know the harsh, unsettling truths and carry the weight of that knowledge? This is not a question of intellect or curiosity. It is a question of existence itself. Can we truly embrace the power of self-awareness without collapsing under its weight? Or, more disturbingly, is there something about our very nature that resists true awareness, preferring the ease of the collective illusion? The fear of self-awareness is not just a societal problem, it is woven into the very fabric of human psychology. And perhaps, just perhaps, that fear runs deeper than any of us realize. To truly understand why society fears the self-aware individual, we must first acknowledge something deeply unsettling about human nature, the desire for comfort over truth. It is not merely ignorance that drives the collective, but a deep-seated psychological mechanism that seeks stability in the face of an overwhelmingly chaotic world. The self-aware individual stands in stark contrast to this desire. By waking up to the realities of existence, they not only destabilize their own perception of the world but also force others to confront the uncomfortable truths they've long avoided. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist, believed that we all harbor what he called the shadow, the parts of ourselves we repress, the truths we refuse to face. This shadow is often so terrifying that we choose to live in denial, in a state of collective unawareness. Jung argued that society, in its most primitive form, seeks to maintain order by avoiding confrontation with these truths. The self-aware individual, who dares to shine light on their own shadow, threatens this fragile order. Their very existence challenges society's collective avoidance. Jung's insights are not isolated. Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher, famously proclaimed that he who fights with monsters should be careful lest he become a monster. Nietzsche understood that to question the established norms and beliefs of society was to open oneself to the abyss of nihilism, a place where all meaning collapses. The self-aware individual is a reminder of this abyss, the terrifying realization that everything, from social constructs to personal identity, could be an illusion. Nietzsche believed that people are naturally inclined to avoid this abyss, preferring the comforting embrace of societal values, even when they are built on shaky foundations. Yet, there's something more insidious at play. Arthur Schopenhauer, a philosopher of pessimism, argued that human beings are driven by the will to live, an insatiable urge to preserve themselves, to exist, and to continue in the familiar, even if that means living in self-deception. Schopenhauer suggested that the self-aware individual, by recognizing the futility of existence, is unable to reconcile with the overpowering will to live. In doing so, they become alienated from society, unable to find solace in the very forces that keep others bound to the superficial rhythms of life. This existential crisis is not new, it has existed for centuries. Aldous Huxley, in his dystopian novel Brave New World, depicted a society that actively sought to suppress individual awareness. People were conditioned to embrace shallow pleasure, avoiding self-reflection at all costs. Huxley understood that the deeper a society pushes its members to abandon critical thinking, the more it ensures its own survival. True self-awareness would destroy the illusion of a perfectly structured world, revealing the cracks in the system. Thus, society fears the self-aware individual because their awareness exposes the very mechanisms that keep the collective blind and docile. In this philosophical landscape, Jean-Paul Sartre adds a crucial layer to our understanding. Sartre's concept of bad faith describes the act of lying to oneself in order to escape the burden of freedom and responsibility. According to Sartre, the human being, in the face of absolute freedom, tends to create false narratives to avoid confronting the overwhelming responsibility of choice. The self-aware individual, who faces the responsibility of creating their own meaning and values, is deeply unsettling to a society that prefers to delegate such responsibilities to institutions, norms, and collective beliefs. For Sartre, true freedom, the kind that comes with self-awareness, is both liberating and terrifying. It demands that individuals confront the full weight of their existence, a challenge that many are unwilling to bear. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, offers another vital perspective. Frankl's experience in concentration camps led him to believe that even in the most dire of circumstances, individuals can find meaning in their suffering. This meaning, however, is only accessible to those who are self-aware enough to confront the depths of their experience. Frankl's existential analysis shows that society's greatest fear is not death, but the loss of meaning. When individuals become self-aware and realize that they must create their own meaning, society, which thrives on shared, superficial purposes, trembles. The self-aware individual's ability to transcend societal constructs forces the collective to question the very foundation of its existence. Thus, what is at the root of society's fear of self-awareness? It is the existential terror that comes with realizing that the world is not as stable, structured, or meaningful as we have been led to believe. It is the fear of individual autonomy, which threatens the collective comfort derived from unquestioned norms. The self-aware individual is not merely a disruptor, they are a mirror reflecting the cracks in the illusion. And that reflection is too much to bear for a society that has learned to live comfortably in denial. In this light, it becomes clear that the fear society has for the self-aware individual is not just about the individual themselves, it is about the fragility of the system as a whole. To awaken means to question everything, and some questions, once asked, cannot be unasked. And so, the individual who dares to awaken is cast out, a pariah in a world that would rather cling to the warmth of its illusions than face the cold light of truth. This fear is not simply external, it is internalized by each of us. To break free of it requires more than mere rebellion. It demands a profound transformation in how we perceive ourselves, our relationships, and our place within the larger fabric of existence. And that journey, while profoundly liberating, is also deeply unsettling. The fear that society harbors toward the self-aware individual is not just theoretical or philosophical, its consequences are deeply ingrained in our personal and collective realities. It's a hidden force that quietly shapes our lives in ways we often fail to recognize, influencing everything from our personal choices to societal structures, relationships, and even the very way we process the world around us. To begin, we must acknowledge the cognitive biases that operate within us all. These biases are psychological mechanisms that guide our thoughts and perceptions, often leading us to favor simplicity, familiarity, and safety over uncomfortable truths. A classic example is the confirmation bias, which compels us to seek out information that aligns with our existing beliefs while ignoring contradictory evidence. This bias is a survival tool. It helps us maintain cognitive and emotional equilibrium in a chaotic world. But when applied to self-awareness, it becomes a dangerous ally of societal denial. When a person begins to question the narrative they've been told, when they start to see through the carefully constructed illusions, they begin to encounter resistance, both internally and externally. The cognitive dissonance that arises from the clash between the comforting lies of the collective and the harsh truths of the individual experience can be overwhelming. It's not just a momentary discomfort, it's an ongoing, gnawing tension that, over time, can erode one's sense of self. This psychological strain often leads the individual to retreat, to recalibrate, and to seek refuge in what is familiar. Social conformity, the drive to fit in and belong to the group, becomes the antidote to this existential pain. The self-aware individual, having ventured too far into the territory of personal truth, often finds themselves faced with the reality that to re-enter the fold of society, they must abandon the insights they've uncovered. The price for reintegration is often the repression of one's own truth. However, the consequences of self-awareness are not merely confined to personal discomfort, they extend into the fabric of societal dynamics. When an individual becomes self-aware, they are no longer easily manipulated. They see through the facades of consumerism, politics, religion, and even the educational system. They recognize these systems not as pillars of truth, but as constructs designed to maintain order and control. And that realization makes them dangerous, not only to those in power but also to those who rely on the same structures for meaning and stability. Consider, for example, the phenomenon of cognitive dissonance in societal institutions. In modern-day democracies, for instance, voters are often presented with binary choices, red or blue, left or right, and conditioned to believe that these choices represent the full spectrum of political thought. But when an individual begins to think critically about politics and realizes that both sides are, in essence, part of the same system of control, they face an existential crisis. How can they continue to participate in this system? The self-aware individual can no longer find meaning in these choices, and in doing so, they reject not only the political system but also the values that uphold it. The same process occurs in the realms of consumer culture and capitalism. Society conditions individuals to believe that happiness and fulfillment are tied to the acquisition of material goods. The self-aware individual, however, begins to see the emptiness in this pursuit, the relentless cycle of desire and consumption that offers fleeting pleasure but no lasting fulfillment. They begin to question the very notion of success, is it measured by what we own? Or by who we are, This awakening is unsettling, not only for the individual but also for the system they inhabit. Capitalism thrives on the unawareness of its participants, on their blind pursuit of wealth, status, and validation. The self-aware individual disrupts this flow, refusing to be a cog in the machine. And in doing so, they become alienated from the collective, forced to face the loneliness of rejecting the very ideals that have shaped the world around them. Beyond this, there are neurological insights that reveal just how deeply rooted our resistance to self-awareness truly is. Studies have shown that when people are confronted with information that challenges their beliefs, especially deeply held beliefs, their brains actually experience the same kind of discomfort as when they encounter physical pain. This reaction, known as cognitive pain, is a direct result of the brain's natural inclination to preserve the status quo. The self-aware individual, by questioning everything, triggers this neurological defense mechanism in both themselves and others. It's a deeply primal response, change is dangerous. Truth is unsettling, This neurological resistance is compounded by the cultural conditioning we experience from the moment we are born. From childhood, we are taught to conform, to follow the rules, and to trust in authority figures. We learn the language of society, the rituals of our families, the expectations of our peers. These cultural narratives are so deeply embedded that they form the bedrock of our identity. To question them is to risk losing a sense of self, a sense of belonging. The hidden consequences of becoming self-aware are insidious because they do not manifest as overt actions, but as subtle shifts in how we interact with the world. The self-aware individual begins to see the layers of societal conditioning that others accept without question. They notice the unconscious biases in their own thoughts, the ways in which their behavior is shaped by the expectations of others, and the overwhelming weight of the narratives that have been imposed upon them. But as they wake up to these truths, they also realize that the very process of waking up is isolating. The more they understand, the more they pull away from the people around them, and the more they are forced to confront the alienation that comes with true awareness. The ultimate consequence of this journey into self-awareness is existential solitude. The self-aware individual, having rejected the illusions that society clings to, often finds themselves alone. They can no longer relate to those who are still trapped in the web of denial. They may find themselves at odds with friends, family, and colleagues who remain comfortably embedded in the very systems they've rejected. The self-aware individual stands at the precipice of a profound realization. The price of truth is often solitude. And while that solitude may bring with it a deeper understanding of the self, it also brings a profound sense of loss. The unseen consequences of self-awareness are not merely psychological, they are cultural, social, and existential. They shape the way we engage with the world, with others, and with ourselves. But perhaps the greatest consequence of all is the way in which self-awareness forces us to confront the most terrifying question of all: what are we willing to sacrifice in order to remain true to ourselves? Breaking free from the weight of societal fear and expectation is not a simple act of defiance, it is an act of profound personal revolution. To escape the grip of a world that clings to illusions requires more than rebellion, it requires a radical shift in perception. It requires a complete rejection of the comfort that society provides in exchange for conformity. But how does one undertake such a transformation? How does one step into the abyss of true self-awareness without falling into despair? The first step toward breaking free is embracing the absurdity of existence. This may sound counterintuitive, even nihilistic, but it is, in fact, the key to liberation. Albert Camus, one of the leading existentialist philosophers, famously wrote about the myth of Sisyphus. In his essay, Camus describes the ancient king Sisyphus, condemned to push a boulder up a mountain only for it to roll back down each time he nears the top. Camus' point was simple yet profound: life is absurd, a constant cycle of struggle without ultimate meaning. And yet, in this absurdity, Sisyphus is free. For Camus, the realization that life holds no inherent meaning does not lead to despair, but to freedom. Once one accepts the absurdity of existence, they are no longer shackled by the need to find meaning in the external world. Instead, meaning becomes a personal creation, born from one's own consciousness. This, in many ways, is the essence of breaking free. It requires the self-aware individual to shed the weight of societal expectations and embrace their own freedom. They must stop seeking validation from the world, and instead, cultivate a sense of meaning from within. This shift is not easy. It requires courage to look at the world and say, "I see the illusion. I will not be bound by it any longer." In that act of rebellion, freedom is born. Historically, there are those who have embraced this rebellion and redefined the course of their lives. Take, for example, the life of Socrates. In ancient Athens, Socrates was seen as a social pariah, a man who questioned everything, from the existence of the gods to the very nature of morality and truth. His relentless pursuit of knowledge, his refusal to conform to societal norms, ultimately led to his trial and execution. Yet, despite his death, Socrates' example continues to inspire us. He rejected the comfort of ignorance and the safety of conformity. In doing so, he left behind a legacy of critical thought that has shaped Western philosophy for centuries. Socrates embodies the essence of breaking free, the willingness to live an authentic life, regardless of the consequences. Similarly, in more recent history, figures like Friedrich Nietzsche and Jean-Paul Sartre exemplified the rebellion of the self-aware individual. Nietzsche's philosophy of the Übermensch, or Overman, calls for individuals to rise above the conventional morality of society and create their own values. Sartre, in his exploration of existentialism, urged people to embrace their radical freedom and take full responsibility for the creation of meaning in their lives. Both philosophers rejected the comfortable illusions of their societies in favor of personal authenticity, understanding that only through such rebellion could one truly experience freedom. Yet, it's important to note that breaking free from the societal machine does not mean retreating from the world or living in isolation. It means engaging with life on your own terms. The self-aware individual is not an outsider in the sense of being detached or apathetic. Rather, they have a profound understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. They understand that they are not separate from society, but that they are part of it, a part that seeks to question, challenge, and reimagine the systems in place. This perspective allows them to be active participants in the world, even as they break free from its constraints. Consider the example of Mahatma Gandhi, a man who defied British colonial rule not through violent rebellion but through the non-violent rebellion of self-awareness. Gandhi understood that true freedom could only be achieved through self-realization, not just for the individual, but for the collective. His non-violent resistance was an act of rebellion against the colonial powers, but it was also an act of rebellion against the mindset of domination and control that underpinned those powers. Gandhi's philosophy was rooted in the understanding that true power lies in the ability to see the world as it truly is, and to act from a place of conscious awareness rather than blind obedience. The rebellion of the self-aware individual is not a rejection of society altogether, but a rejection of its limiting ideologies and systems. It is the act of questioning everything, of daring to stand apart, and of redefining one's own existence. This rebellion is not about destroying the world around us, but about building a new one from the ground up, a world in which individuals are free to create meaning and value on their own terms. In this context, breaking free means confronting the societal structures that demand conformity, structures that teach us to be afraid of our own self-awareness. It means stepping outside the box, knowing full well that doing so may result in alienation, loneliness, or conflict. But it also means embracing the freedom that comes from living authentically, from embracing the uncomfortable truths that others are too afraid to face. The true rebellion, then, is not in fighting against external forces, but in fighting the internal forces that keep us enslaved to the illusion. It is a battle of consciousness, a battle of perception. By breaking free from the shackles of collective ignorance, we step into a space where we can finally embrace our true selves. To embark on this journey requires an act of courage, of stepping into the unknown with open eyes, unafraid of the darkness that may lie ahead. And in that act, one finds the true power of self-awareness, not as a burden, but as the ultimate key to freedom. You have questioned the illusion. You have faced the fear that society imposes on those who awaken to their own self-awareness. And now, you stand at the precipice of an even deeper revelation, the ultimate truth. This truth is not something that can be taught or explained away. It is something that must be experienced, something that you must come to understand on your own terms. The ultimate truth is this: the very thing that society fears in the self-aware individual is not the loss of order, but the loss of meaning. When we wake up to the truth of our existence, we are forced to confront the terrifying realization that meaning is not something inherent in the world, but something we must create for ourselves. This is the existential burden, the recognition that there is no preordained purpose, no universal truth that governs our lives. We are free to shape our own meaning, but in that freedom lies a profound responsibility. This responsibility is what makes self-awareness so powerful and why it is feared by society. For once we understand that we are the creators of our own meaning, we are no longer bound by the scripts that others have written for us. We no longer conform to societal expectations, religious doctrines, or cultural narratives. We become free to define ourselves, to live according to our own values and principles. And yet, this freedom is not a cause for celebration. It is both exhilarating and terrifying. Without meaning imposed from the outside, we are left with the weight of our own choices. Each decision, each action, becomes an expression of our deepest truth, and this truth, once recognized, can never be unknown. We are faced with the reality that we are responsible for the meaning we create, and this can be overwhelming. This, then, is the crux of the self-aware individual's journey, the awareness that they are both the prisoner and the liberator of their own existence. The ultimate truth is that we are not just living in the world, we are creating it, moment by moment. Every interaction, every thought, every choice we make, shapes the world around us. We are co-creators of the reality we experience, and in that power lies the potential for both liberation and destruction. The self-aware individual understands that their actions ripple out into the world, that their consciousness influences the collective reality. And this knowledge is both empowering and burdening. What, then, is the true nature of freedom? It is the freedom to create meaning, but also the courage to bear the weight of that creation. It is not an escape from responsibility, but an embrace of it. The self-aware individual does not shy away from the task of creating meaning. They confront it head-on, knowing that each moment is an opportunity to shape their existence. They understand that the very act of self-awareness forces them to take responsibility for the world they create, both within themselves and in the external world. The ultimate truth is also that we are all in this together. In the isolation of self-awareness, it's easy to forget that we are not alone. We are all grappling with the same existential questions, each of us trying to make sense of a world that seems chaotic and meaningless. The self-aware individual recognizes this shared humanity. They may stand apart from the collective, but they are not separate from it. In embracing their own freedom, they open the door for others to do the same. In this light, the self-aware individual becomes not just an outcast, but a potential catalyst for transformation. Their willingness to question, to reject the imposed narratives, and to create meaning from within can serve as an example for others. The self-aware individual shows us that freedom is not something given to us by society, it is something we must take, create, and embody. And in doing so, they reveal to us the ultimate paradox, that true freedom comes not from escaping society, but from engaging with it on our own terms, without fear of what others might think. In the end, the journey towards self-awareness is not a path toward enlightenment, nor is it a solution to all of life's problems. It is simply the beginning of a deeper, more authentic way of being. It is a journey into the unknown, into the space where meaning is not given, but made. It is a process of embracing the absurdity of existence and finding purpose within it. The self-aware individual does not seek comfort in the familiar, they seek truth, even when that truth is unsettling. They do not fear the unknown, they step into it, knowing that in that uncertainty lies the power to create their own reality. So, where does this leave you? What are you willing to create? The truth is, you are already creating your reality, moment by moment, thought by thought. The question is, what will you choose to create next? In the final reckoning, the ultimate truth is simple yet profound. The only true power we have is the power to define ourselves, to create meaning in a world that offers none. And in that power lies the deepest freedom, one that can never be taken from us, no matter how much the world may fear it, ***.